I think we both know who took my grandma's ring, right? Serena Coldwell's voice rang out like broken glass in the sunny dining room, aimed at Ruby Harmon, who stood frozen on the other side of the shiny mahogany table, dust cloth still in hand. The afternoon light, initiated by the crystal windows, reflected the tears in Ruby's eyes. Meanwhile, the righteous fury of Serena's red silk blouse began to emanate. I had trusted you in my home for 23 years, Ruby, and this is what you do? Serena stepped close as her pearl necklace shimmered, and she spoke in a poisonous whisper. That ring is worth more than what you'll earn in 5 years, so return it to me or I'll call the cops. Ruby's green cleaning uniform seemed to suddenly weigh down on her as she bore the brunt of the false accusations. Little did Serena know that this maid had connections that would shatter her perfect world. Welcome to Frost Folktales. This is where we tell the stories of those who were underestimated, dismissed, and targeted, yet chose courage over silence. If these stories move you, subscribe and be part of a community that refuses to let them fade into the background. I would never. Mrs. Coldwell, with trembling legs, Ruby's voice broke as she clutched her cleaning cloth to her blue apron. As she gazed at the woman she had served for over 20 years, whose house she maintained, whose family she looked after, whose secrets she concealed safely in her heart, she found the words stuck in her throat. Please don't ever lie to me. Serena's voice grew louder and shrieked in pain as she fell on the white marble floor Ruby had just cleaned. She stepped closer, her red silk blouse luminous under the overhead fluorescent lights, the black designer pants clicking against the marble with each aggressive step. I have looked everywhere, and you're the last person to be in my room. The ring is a beautifully made Art Deco piece made by a renowned jeweler. It has belonged to my grandmother and has graced our family for generations. And you think you can pocket this ring easily? The accusation felt like a punch to Ruby's stomach, and all of a sudden, the sunny dining room spun around. It flooded her mind with memories of 23 years, like a vicious hurricane. The first time she entered this mansion, on that day a nervous yet hopeful girl had worn a new green uniform. At that point in time, she was a young mother desperate for consistent work to support her infant, Marcus. She was willing to do whatever it took to secure a decent life for her child. Ruby could see herself at 25, standing in this very dining room, learning how to properly polish the crystal chandelier that now cast rainbows across the walls. Serena had been demanding even then, but Ruby had accepted it as the price of employment. She remembered working through countless holidays, missing Marcus's school plays and soccer games, always choosing the extra hours that would add a few more dollars to her son's college fund. The memories cascaded through her mind like a bitter slideshow. Serena screaming at her for using the wrong cleaning product on the antique furniture, even though Ruby had followed the instructions perfectly. Serena docking her pay for taking a sick day when Marcus had pneumonia. Serena forcing her to work 16-hour days during party preparations, then criticizing every detail with cruel precision. Each cruel remark, each humiliation, each repudiation of herself, Ruby had swallowed down for Marcus's sake. She had tolerated it all. Her amazing son, who was now in his final year studying at Harvard Medical School, a few months away from becoming Dr. Marcus Harmon, the boy she once raised all by herself, the lad who called her every Sunday to thank her for his sacrifices, the boy on his way to becoming a doctor who would soon take care of her as she always took care of him. Ruby attempted once more. The voice that called out Mrs. Coldwell sounded more confident now. Don't treat me like this. You know me. I'd never rob you, you know that. I have been cleaning your house for 23 years. I have never stolen anything, not even a paperclip. I've had opportunities to gain access to cash, jewelry, valuables, and I've never taken anything that's not mine. Serena laughed, her voice harsh and metallic, and echoed into the mansion large. Ruby, don't play innocent with me. Do you think that because I trusted you with my home, and you've been here so long, that you are not a suspect. Let me tell you about trust. My friend, a minute of greediness can undo the decades of goodness in one's life. Ruby could see that to Serena. After 23 years of service that Ruby had given her, everything meant nothing. All those mornings when she had come early to help prepare breakfast, all those evenings when she had stayed late to polish every surface, all those times she had gone beyond her duties when not asked, none of it mattered now. In Serena's eyes, she was nothing but a hired hand, someone whose character could be waved off with a manicured hand. "It went missing at my anniversary party," said Serena while moving like a panther at the marble floor. "The cops will contact the insurance company, and the insurance company will ask for a police report. When fingerprinted, your prints will be all over the bedroom because you cleaned the bedroom first thing yesterday morning. How thoughtful of you. What a great plan." Ruby had a vivid recollection of that day. She had paid extra attention to the cleaning of Serena's master bedroom. As party guests could use the upstairs bathroom, she dusted every surface, vacuumed every crevice, and polished every piece of furniture until they shone. She had tidied up the various things on Serena's dresser, even placing the jewelry box with precious rings and necklace, sorted like trophies. Ruby whispered, "My son," in a hushed voice. 3 months from now, he will graduate from medical school. If you involve the police, if you bring this charge to fruition, it would be the death knell for his career, even before it begins." "I swear I didn't do it, Mrs. Coldwell. You know me." "Is it your son?" Serena's voice was filled with disgust. "Are you talking about the job I've been paying for through your salary? The kid you've been so proud of, always bragging about his grades, feats, and bright future? Either way, we'll both be taught that actions have consequences. Perhaps this incident will make him realize that his mother is a mere criminal." The words cut deeper than any physical blade could have. Ruby had sacrificed everything for Marcus's education, every extra hour she worked, every holiday she missed, every personal need she denied herself. It had all been for him. She had saved every possible penny, living in a tiny apartment, wearing the same clothes for years, eating simple meals so that Marcus could have textbooks, study materials, and the occasional care package during exam periods. Ruby had been so proud when Marcus was accepted to Harvard Medical School. She remembered the day the acceptance letter arrived, how she had cried tears of joy in her small kitchen, knowing that all her sacrifices had been worth it. She had framed his acceptance letter and hung it on her bedroom wall, looking at it every morning as inspiration to face another day of Serena's demands. As Ruby stood in the sunny dining room facing the ugly accusations, she realized it was all coming apart. Everything she worked for was slipping away. A criminal charge, unless they were proven false, could follow Marcus throughout his medical career. Hospital and licensing committees would see Mother's arrest record in background checks. That would cast doubt on his character and integrity. "I am calling the cops right away," Serena said, taking out her phone from her bag. "Your locker, your vehicle, and maybe even your flat are all subject to search. Once they locate my ring, you will be in trouble for theft, and I will manage that each home in this neighborhood knows what sort of person you are." He heard his wife's voice raised from his office and saw Thomas Coldwell in the doorway. In a blue business suit, troubled, gazing silently at the scene stood a businessman. Ruby gazed desperately at him to defend her and remind Serena of her loyal service and good character through the years. Thomas had always been nicer than the missus. Whenever he saw Ruby, he always greeted her. Sometimes he would ask how Marcus was doing in school. After a holiday party, Thomas sometimes left generous tips. Certainly, he would now raise his voice for her now, urge that wife to think reasonably and check out other options before ruining life of an innocent woman. But Thomas remained silent, his eyes downcast, his hands clasped behind his back. Ruby realized with crushing disappointment that he was too weak, too controlled by his domineering wife to stand up for what was right. His silence felt like another betrayal, another confirmation that she was truly alone in this nightmare. "Pack up your supplies," Serena commanded, her voice filled with triumph. "You're fired, effective immediately. I'm keeping your final paycheck to cover the cost of the investigation, and if my ring isn't returned within 24 hours, I'm pressing full criminal charges. Security will escort you out so you don't steal anything else on your way." Ruby shook as she picked up the cleaning stuff. It felt like a dream. This cannot be occurring. 23 years of loyalty wouldn't end like this. She considered contacting Marcus to hear his voice. She just couldn't bring herself to tell him. Not so. Not when his finals were just weeks away. With the arrival of security guards in uniform, Ruby clutched her last paycheck with trembling hands. The paper seemed inconsequential in her hands, a pity after all those years of endless hard work. Through the windows and down the terrace, she could hear the chatter of partygoers in the garden. They were probably talking about the maid who was caught stealing already. Ruby held her head high as she walked through the mansion one last time, past the crystal chandelier she had cleaned so carefully, past the mahogany furniture she had polished with such pride, past the white marble floors that reflected her green uniform and blue apron like a distorted mirror. With each step, her shock and devastation began transforming into something else. Something stronger and more dangerous. Determination. She was determined that 23 years of honest work would not end in disgrace. She would not allow a false charge ruin her son's future. She wouldn't allow Serena Coldwell's riches and privilege crush the truth. Throughout her adult life, Ruby Harmon had been ignored, sidelined, and not taken seriously. Serena Coldwell was about to discover that her meek maid was vastly different than she presumed. Moreover, she had strength beyond imagining that would turn her perfect world upside down. The fight for justice was just beginning. Ruby, still wearing the green cleaning uniform, along with the blue apron she'd worn for over 20 years, sat down at the modest dining table with the weight of unemployment bearing down on her shoulders like a physical burden. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. As she called Marcus at Harvard, she felt her heart pounding against her ribs at the thought of shattering their entire lives. When the voice responded, bright with youthful enthusiasm and academic success, Ruby forced herself to smile, even though the other person couldn't see. She said, "Hey baby, how are the studies going?" in a calm voice, though she was bursting inside. "Mom, you sound different. Is everything okay?" Marcus had always been perceptive, even as a child, and medical school had sharpened his ability to read people. Ruby closed her eyes, drawing strength from years of protecting her son from the harsh realities of their situation. "I have some news, sweetheart. I'm no longer working for the Coldwell family." The silence on the other end of the line stretched out like a taut string. Then Marcus spoke again. "What happened? Did they fire you? After all these years?" "It's a bit complicated, honey. The important thing is that you focus on your senior year. I'll handle everything over here." There was the same protective tone in Ruby's voice that she'd used when Marcus asked why his father wasn't around when he was 7, or when he wondered why they couldn't afford the school trip his classmates were going on when he was 14. "Mom, don't try to shield me from whatever it is. I'm not a kid anymore. What really happened?" Ruby felt tears that she was holding back. "There was a mix-up regarding some lost property. Mrs. Coldwell and I had a disagreement about it. Nothing for you to worry about." Once Ruby hung up the phone, she sat inside her apartment, which was a quite small place. The furniture, which was scattered around the apartment, was everything she had collected in 23 years that served her faithful service. All these items belonged to Marcus's mom, who gave away her things to make his life better. The used couch where she assisted him with his homework, the little screen where they took in his favorite shows, and the dining room where they ate well, while she repeated double shifts to afford his education. The decision crystallized in her mind with startling clarity. She wouldn't let Serena Coldwell destroy everything she'd worked for without a fight. Ruby opened her laptop. A graduation gift Marcus had insisted on buying her with money from his part-time job, and began searching for private investigators in the area. Detective Owen Blackwell's website appeared after several searches, featuring testimonials from clients who'd been wrongfully accused or needed help uncovering the truth in difficult situations. His credentials were impressive, and more importantly, his fee structure suggested he understood that not all his clients came from wealth. Ruby's life savings, accumulated penny by penny over decades, would cover his retainer with little left over. A couple of hours later, Ruby walked into Murphy's Diner downtown. She had changed from her uniform into a simple blue dress. The restaurant has overhead and abundant natural light shining through large windows, ensuring she wouldn't be shadowed, even if nervous. At once, a man in an orange polo shirt, blue jeans, and boots caught her attention. It was Detective Blackwell, Mrs. Harmon. He stood up as she came toward him and shook hands. "I appreciate our collaboration." When Ruby shook his hand, he noticed calluses on his palm, suggesting he wasn't afraid of hard work either. "Of course, I'm happy to see you. Thanks for coming in. Feel free to call me Owen. I have to say, following our phone call, I'm very interested in the full story." Luke and Ruby sat in the booth bathed in sunlight, and Ruby started to tell the story of the anniversary party. Owen's notes were punctuated by questions which displayed he was paying attention to detail. Staring into her face with his dark eyes, Ruby saw intelligence and real concern in those eyes. "Just to clarify," Owen said, after Ruby had finished, "you've been working for this family for 23 years and have never, not once, attempted to be dishonest or steal from them?" "Not a single one. I have been entrusted with their most valuable possessions, home security codes and family secrets. I have seen their kids grow up and helped run the house during their most intimate moments." Owen's pen moved across his notepad as he captured every detail. "And Mrs. Coldwell immediately accused you without checking security footage, interviewing other guests, or considering any other possibilities. She took one look at me and decided I was guilty. In front of everyone at that party, she treated me like a common criminal." Ruby's voice carried the weight of decades of small humiliations, but this final insult had crossed a line she couldn't ignore. "What do you remember about the other staff that was there that day?" Ruby handed over the list of names and contacts of the catering workers, an extra cleanup crew, and the security staff who were present at the anniversary celebration. Owen's constant stream of questions quickly revealed a mind that missed nothing. For the first time since leaving the Coldwell mansion, Ruby began to feel a flicker of hope. "I have to be frank with you regarding the financial requirements of this investigation," Owen said, his face serious. "Private investigation work is quite costly, especially those involving affluent families." "I see. I have a savings amount of $18,000. It's all I've been able to save up after paying for my son's education." Her voice quivered at the number which was all of decades of sacrifice. For a time, Owen was quiet, staring at her face in the open light coming through the window. "I have been doing this work for 15 years, and I know one thing when someone is telling the truth. Everything about your story says you are telling the truth. Your character and your reputation say you are the victim of a serious injustice here. Could this indicate that you'll represent me? It implies that I will do whatever I can to get the truth, and I won't charge you so much that it will bankrupt you in the process." Owen closed his notepad and leaned slightly forward. "I want you to know that this isn't just about the accusations levied against you. What Mrs. Coldwell did to you was wrong on many levels, and there has to be ramifications for that kind of behavior." Owen described how he would go about his investigation. He'd start researching the Coldwell family's history with domestic staff, obtain the guest list for the anniversary party, and interview everyone with access to the area where the ring was kept. His tactics were methodical and above board, aiming not only to find out who actually took the ring, but to build a case that would clear Ruby completely. Owen said he would also like to interview former employees. If Mrs. Coldwell has a history of treating staff badly, that is relevant to your case. Ruby suggested several former colleagues' names and contact details, including that of Mrs. Florence Kingsley. She was formerly in the employment of the Coldwell family before Ruby and could provide insight into Serena's character and behavior patterns. Before leaving the diner, Owen gave Ruby a business card and a preliminary contract that outlined the terms of their deal. "I have full faith in your innocence, and I'm going to prove it. I also want you to brace yourself, because we might discover some ugly truths about people you have worked with for a long time." Ruby nodded, confirming her acknowledgement. "Detective Blackwell, I've spent 23 years cleaning up other people's messes and keeping their secrets. I'm not afraid of the truth, whatever it might be." Owen started his research in earnest during the evening in his home office, which was brightly illuminated by fluorescent light that ensured he wouldn't miss anything. Documents reveal that the Coldwell family has had dozens of domestic staff members over the past decade, with an odd resignation rate suggestive of workplace issues. The missing ring itself proved to be significant beyond its monetary value. Online estate jewelry databases confirmed it as a 1920s Art Deco piece, worth approximately $75,000, originally belonging to Serena's grandmother. Insurance records showed it had been professionally appraised within the past 2 years, suggesting the Coldwells were well aware of its value. More interesting were the employment records Owen managed to access through his professional contacts. 3 former housekeeping staff members had left the Coldwell employment abruptly over the past 5 years, all citing personal reasons, but none willing to provide references from their former employer. Owen's investigations had only just begun, but already patterns were emerging in support of Ruby's account of Serena Coldwell. The detective felt satisfaction at chasing a hot lead while getting angry that Ruby had suffered a great injustice because of it. That night, as Ruby lay in her tiny bedroom staring at the ceiling illuminated by a streetlight outside her window, she felt something she hadn't felt in decades of working for the Coldwell family. For the first time, there was someone fighting for her. Someone who believed she was worth something and not just a human being. The investigation was about to reveal truths that would shake the foundations of everything everyone thought they knew about the Coldwell family and their circle of wealthy friends. But Ruby didn't know that yet. All she knew was that tomorrow would bring new possibilities, and for the first time since leaving that mansion in disgrace, she allowed herself to hope for justice. The fluorescent light in her kitchen continued to hum softly as Ruby finally drifted off to sleep, Detective Blackwell's business card on her nightstand serving as a tangible reminder that her fight for vindication had officially begun. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Café Sterling as Detective Owen Blackwell spread his investigation notes across the marble table. His orange polo shirt caught the natural light filtering down from the glass ceiling above. The upscale coffee shop buzzed with the quiet conversations of the city's professional elite, making it the perfect location to blend in while conducting his interviews. Blackwell's muscular frame leaned forward as he reviewed the guest list from Serena Coldwell's anniversary party. 23 names stared back at him, each one a potential key to clearing Ruby Harmon's name. His methodical approach had always served him well, and this case would be no different. The injustice Ruby faced fueled his determination to uncover every detail, no matter how small. His first interview was with Margaret Steinberg, a socialite who had been close to the family bedroom during the party. She arrived precisely on time, her silver hair perfectly styled and her blue jacket immaculate despite her 72 years. Margaret settled into the chair across from Blackwell, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Detective, I must say this entire situation is quite distressing," Margaret began, her voice carrying the refined tones of old money. "Ruby has worked for the Coldwells longer than most marriages last these days." Blackwell pulled out his notebook, the pages crisp under the overhead lighting. "Mrs. Steinberg, can you walk me through your movements during the party, particularly around the time the ring went missing?" Margaret's fingers drummed against her coffee cup. "Well, I did visit Serena's bedroom to freshen up. The downstairs powder room had quite a line. I remember seeing several people in that hallway throughout the evening." She paused, her brow furrowing. "Now that I think about it, those security cameras in the hallway seem to have some sort of malfunction. The little red lights weren't blinking like they usually do." This detail sent a jolt of professional satisfaction through Blackwell. Security camera malfunctions during a theft were rarely coincidental. He pressed further. "Did you notice anyone acting unusually near the bedroom?" "Several people were coming and going," Margaret replied. "Thomas was there at one point, looking rather distressed about something. Celeste Drummond made multiple trips upstairs, which struck me as odd since she's usually quite social at these gatherings." Blackwell made careful notes, his pen moving steadily across the page. The natural skylight above cast sharp shadows on his notebook as he documented every detail. Margaret provided a few more observations before excusing herself, leaving Blackwell to contemplate the growing list of inconsistencies surrounding the party. His next stop was Thomas Coldwell's downtown office, located on the 32nd floor of a gleaming corporate tower. The afternoon sun blazed through the expansive windows, illuminating the mahogany furniture and crystal awards that decorated the space. Thomas sat behind his desk, wearing a crisp green dress shirt and navy suit pants, his usually confident demeanor notably absent. "Detective Blackwell, I appreciate you taking time to investigate this matter," Thomas said, though his voice lacked conviction. His hands fidgeted with a gold pen, rolling it between his fingers in a nervous rhythm. Blackwell settled into the leather chair opposite Thomas, noting how the other man avoided direct eye contact. "Mr. Coldwell, I need to understand the dynamics of your household. How long has Ruby worked for you?" 23 years, Thomas replied immediately. "She started when we were newlyweds. Ruby has been nothing but loyal and trustworthy." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Then why didn't you defend her when your wife made the accusation?" Thomas's shoulders sagged under the weight of the question. The fluorescent office lighting cast harsh shadows across his face, aging him considerably. "Detective, my marriage is complicated. Serena has very strong opinions, and she doesn't tolerate disagreement well." He paused, staring out the window at the city below. "I've never trusted her judgment when it comes to the staff. She's always been quick to blame them for anything that goes wrong." Blackwell leaned forward, sensing an opportunity. "Has anything like this happened before?" "Not theft accusations specifically, but Serena has fired several employees over the years for various reasons that I found questionable." Thomas's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I feel trapped in my own home, Detective. I should have spoken up for Ruby, but the consequences of opposing Serena can be severe." The admission hung in the air like a confession. Blackwell recognized the signs of a man caught between his conscience and his circumstances. He made detailed notes about Thomas's revelations, each word potentially crucial to Ruby's vindication. His most intriguing interview came later that day at an exclusive restaurant with soaring ceilings and walls of windows that flooded the space with natural light. Celeste Drummond had agreed to meet him, though she seemed reluctant when he called. She arrived 15 minutes late, her red designer dress and matching jacket impeccably styled, but her demeanor noticeably anxious. Celeste's manicured hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her purse strap, and Blackwell's trained eye immediately catalogued her nervous behaviors. She touched her purse protectively throughout their conversation, as if guarding something precious within it. "Mrs. Drummond, thank you for meeting with me," Blackwell began, his voice professionally warm but probing. "I'm investigating the theft at the Coldwell anniversary party, and I need to account for everyone's movements that evening." Celeste's laugh sounded forced, brittle like breaking glass. Of course, Detective, though I'm not sure how much help I can be. It was such a busy evening with so many people coming and going. Walk me through your evening. What time did you arrive? Where did you spend most of your time? Celeste's eyes darted around the restaurant, landing everywhere except on Blackwell's face. I arrived around 7, I think. Spent time in the garden initially, then moved inside when it got chilly. She paused, her fingers clutching her purse tighter. I may have gone upstairs once or twice to use the facilities. Blackwell noted her evasiveness with growing intrigue. Once or twice? Can you be more specific? Well, the downstairs bathroom had quite a line, you understand? These social events can be challenging for us ladies. Her attempt at humor fell flat, and sweat beaded on her forehead despite the restaurant's comfortable temperature. Did you interact with Ruby Harmon at all during the evening? Celeste's reaction was immediate and telling. Her face flushed, and she nearly knocked over her water glass. Ruby, no, not really. The help tends to stay in the background at these events, as they should. The dismissive comment revealed more than Celeste intended. Blackwell recognized the deflection tactic, the way guilty parties often distance themselves from their victims. He pressed gently but persistently, watching as Celeste's composure continued to crack. Mrs. Drummond, some guests mentioned seeing you in the upstairs hallway multiple times. Is there a reason you made several trips? I honestly don't remember all the details, she snapped, then immediately softened her tone. I'm sorry, Detective. This whole situation has been very stressful for all of us in Serena's social circle. Blackwell excused himself briefly to make a phone call, giving Celeste time to compose herself while he began preliminary background research. What he discovered in just 15 minutes of calls sent his investigative instincts into overdrive. Celeste Drummond had been quietly asked to leave the Hillcrest Country Club 6 months earlier. The Fairmont Garden Society had revoked her membership after an incident involving missing donation funds. The Charity Alliance had similarly distanced themselves from her following unexplained discrepancies in their silent auction proceeds. When Blackwell returned to the table, he studied Celeste with new eyes. Her red outfit seemed to mock her attempts at innocence, and her protective gestures toward her purse took on sinister significance. Mrs. Drummond, I've learned that you've had some difficulties with various social organizations recently. Would you like to explain those situations? Celeste's face went pale, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the fear in her eyes. I don't know what you're implying, Detective, but I resent the insinuation. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm investigating facts. Ruby Harmon's reputation and livelihood have been destroyed based on an accusation with no evidence. If there are other explanations for what happened that night, I need to explore them. The confrontation sent waves of tension through their corner of the restaurant. Other diners in their business attire and bright clothing seemed to sense the drama unfolding, though they maintained the polite fiction of not listening. Celeste gathered her things abruptly. I think this conversation is over, Detective. If you have further questions, you can contact my attorney. As she stood to leave, Blackwell noticed her purse catch on the chair arm, spilling some contents onto the floor. Among the usual items was a small velvet jewelry bag, which she quickly snatched up with trembling fingers. The brief glimpse sent adrenaline coursing through Blackwell's veins. After Celeste's hasty departure, Blackwell sat in the restaurant's natural light and compiled his notes. The security camera malfunctions, Thomas's admissions about his wife's character, and most significantly, Celeste's suspicious behavior and troubled history with other organizations painted a picture that had nothing to do with Ruby Harmon's guilt. His phone rang as he prepared to leave. Ruby's voice came through, tired but hopeful. Detective Blackwell, have you learned anything that might help my case? Blackwell looked out at the city skyline, his confidence growing with each passing hour. Ruby, I can't share all the details yet, but I want you to know that I'm finding serious inconsistencies in the accusations against you. Keep faith. The truth has a way of surfacing when you dig deep enough. As he ended the call, Blackwell felt the familiar rush of a case breaking open. Celeste Drummond's nervous behavior, her history of troubles with social organizations, and her protective attitude toward her belongings suggested a pattern that had nothing to do with Ruby's supposed guilt and everything to do with someone else's secret shame. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the restaurant windows as Blackwell planned his next moves. He needed concrete evidence, not just suspicions, but every instinct told him he was closing in on the truth that would vindicate Ruby and expose the real perpetrator. The wealthy social circle's protective secrecy was beginning to crack, and Detective Owen Blackwell intended to exploit every fissure until justice emerged into the light. Detective Owen Blackwell sat in his bright office space, fluorescent lights humming overhead as natural light streamed through the large windows. His muscular frame filled the chair behind his desk, orange polo shirt crisp against his dark skin as he spread out police reports and documents across the polished surface. The investigation into Ruby Harmon's case had taken an unexpected turn, and he could feel the pieces of a much larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. The computer screen glowed before him, displaying archived police reports that most people would never see. Thanks to his connections in law enforcement and years of investigative experience, Detective Blackwell had uncovered something disturbing about Celeste Drummond. The wealthy socialite had a history that her family's money and influence had worked hard to bury. 3 incidents in the past 2 years, he muttered to himself, scrolling through the carefully worded reports. Each one described missing jewelry at high-profile social events where Celeste had been present. Each one had been quietly resolved without charges filed. The complaints mysteriously withdrawn after private conversations with the Drummond family lawyers. The pattern was undeniable. A diamond bracelet missing from a charity gala, an antique brooch vanishing during a garden party, a pearl necklace disappearing from a museum fundraiser. All events where Celeste Drummond had mingled among the wealthy elite, and all cases that had been swept under the rug with generous donations to the victims and promises of discretion. Detective Blackwell leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. Ruby Harmon had been accused of stealing based on nothing more than Serena Coldwell's prejudiced assumptions, while the real pattern of theft had been happening right under everyone's noses for years. His phone rang, breaking the silence of his investigation. The caller ID showed Dr. Hannah Briggs, the psychiatrist he had been trying to reach for the past 2 days. Detective Blackwell, "I received your messages," Dr. Briggs said, her voice professional but cautious. "I must tell you that I cannot discuss any patient information due to doctor-patient confidentiality. I'm sure you understand." "Dr. Briggs, I appreciate your position," Detective Blackwell replied, his tone respectful but firm. "However, I have evidence suggesting that your patient's condition may pose a public safety risk. Innocent people are being harmed, and I believe you can help prevent further damage." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Detective Blackwell could hear Dr. Briggs considering his words, weighing her professional obligations against the potential consequences of remaining silent. "I would need to see concrete evidence of public risk," she finally said. "Can you come to my office this afternoon? I have an opening at 3 o'clock. 2 hours later, Detective Blackwell sat across from Dr. Hannah Briggs in her bright corner office. The psychiatrist wore a professional green blouse and black skirt, her gray hair pulled back neatly as she reviewed the documents he had presented. Natural light filled the room from floor to ceiling windows, creating an atmosphere of clinical clarity. "These reports are concerning," Dr. Briggs admitted after studying the police files. "I cannot confirm or deny any specific patient information, but I can tell you that kleptomania is a serious condition that often stems from deeper psychological trauma. In hypothetical cases involving someone with such a condition, the compulsion to steal is typically triggered by emotional stress, substance abuse issues, or major life changes like divorce." Detective Blackwell nodded, understanding the careful way she was providing information without violating confidentiality. In your professional opinion, would someone with this condition be likely to allow an innocent person to be blamed for their actions? The shame and fear associated with kleptomania can cause individuals to make poor decisions, Dr. Briggs replied thoughtfully. They may panic when confronted with the consequences of their actions, sometimes allowing others to suffer rather than face exposure themselves. It's a tragic aspect of the condition that the compulsion often overrides moral judgment. The meeting confirmed Detective Blackwell's suspicions, but it also generated sympathy for Celeste Drummond's struggles. Mental illness didn't excuse causing harm to innocent people like Ruby Harmon, but it explained the pattern of behavior he was uncovering. Meanwhile, across town in a gleaming office building, Ruby Harmon pushed her cleaning cart down the bright fluorescent-lit hallway. She wore a different uniform today, orange top with blue work pants, as she had been forced to take temporary positions with various cleaning companies. The steady work she had known for 23 years was gone, replaced by uncertainty and the constant stress of proving herself to new employers who had heard whispers about her situation. Her phone buzzed as she entered an empty office to begin cleaning. Marcus's name appeared on the screen, and Ruby's heart immediately tightened with worry. Her son rarely called during the day when he should be focused on his medical school studies. "Mama, I need to ask you something," Marcus said without preamble when she answered. "Someone here at school said they heard something about you and the Coldwells. Something about missing jewelry. People are talking, and I need to know what's really going on." Ruby sank into the office chair, her orange cleaning uniform a stark contrast to the executive furniture around her. The bright overhead lighting seemed harsh suddenly, highlighting the exhaustion in her face as she struggled with how much to tell her son. "Maybe there was some confusion at Mrs. Coldwell's party," she said carefully. "Something went missing, and there were some false accusations made. But Detective Blackwell is working to clear everything up. You don't need to worry about me. You focus on your studies." "Mama, I know you better than that," Marcus replied, his voice filled with concern and love. "You've sacrificed everything for my education, and now people are questioning your character? This isn't right. I should come home and help you fight this." "Absolutely not," Ruby said firmly, though her voice was thick with emotion. "You are 3 months away from becoming Dr. Marcus Harmon, and nothing is going to stop that. Not Serena Coldwell, not her accusations, and certainly not her money and influence. I raised you to be strong, and now I need you to trust that your mama is strong too." After the call ended, Ruby sat alone in the bright office, fighting back tears. The theft accusation was spreading through the domestic worker network, making it harder to find steady employment. She had maintained her dignity and professionalism for decades, but now her reputation was being destroyed by lies and prejudice. Detective Blackwell spent the remainder of the day tracking down other guests from the anniversary party, working methodically through his list. He met with witnesses in various bright, well-lit locations around the city, each conversation adding pieces to the puzzle he was assembling. His breakthrough came during a late afternoon meeting with Mrs. Florence Kingsley, the elderly woman who had attended the party and worked briefly with Ruby years earlier. They sat in a sunny cafe with large windows, Mrs. Kingsley wearing her signature blue jacket as she carefully considered Detective Blackwell's questions. "I remember seeing Celeste that evening," Mrs. Kingsley said, stirring her tea thoughtfully. "She seemed agitated, more so than usual. You know, Celeste has always been high-strung, especially since her divorce last year. Did you notice her behavior around the time the ring went missing?" Detective Blackwell asked, his notebook ready to capture every detail. Mrs. Kingsley paused, her weathered hands wrapped around her teacup. "Actually, yes. I was looking for the powder room upstairs and saw Celeste coming out of what I assumed was Serena's bedroom. She looked flustered, almost panicked, and she was clutching her purse very tightly against her chest." "What time was this?" "It must have been around 8:30, maybe 8:45. I remember because the sun was just starting to set, and the light in the hallway was that golden color you get in the evening. Celeste nearly ran into me, and when I said hello, she barely acknowledged me. Very unlike her usual social behavior, Detective Blackwell felt the satisfaction of a crucial piece falling into place. Mrs. Kingsley's testimony provided a direct connection between Celeste and Serena's bedroom during the time frame when the ring disappeared. Combined with the pattern of previous thefts and Dr. Briggs's insights about kleptomania, he was building a compelling case. Back in his office that evening, Detective Blackwell organized all the evidence he had gathered. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he created a timeline of events, connecting Celeste's suspicious behavior with her history of compulsive theft. He had enough circumstantial evidence to strongly suggest Celeste's guilt, but he knew that wouldn't be sufficient to completely clear Ruby's name and restore her reputation. The investigation had revealed a troubling pattern of wealth and privilege, protecting someone with a serious mental health condition, while an innocent woman suffered the consequences. Celeste Drummond's family had used their money and influence to cover up her crimes for years, allowing her condition to worsen while other people paid the price. Detective Blackwell thought about Ruby Harmon, working different cleaning jobs and struggling to maintain her dignity while rumors spread about her character. He thought about Marcus, worried about his mother while trying to focus on becoming a doctor. The injustice of the situation fueled his determination to find the definitive proof needed to expose the truth. He picked up his phone and dialed Ruby's number. When she answered, he could hear the exhaustion in her voice, but also the strength that had carried her through 23 years of serving an ungrateful employer. "Ms. Harmon, I wanted to update you on the investigation," he said. "I've uncovered significant evidence suggesting who really took that ring, and it wasn't you. But I need a few more days to gather the concrete proof that will end this nightmare for you completely." "Thank you, Detective Blackwell," Ruby replied, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. "I've been praying for the truth to come out, and I believe God sent you to help make that happen." As Detective Blackwell ended the call, he stared out his office window at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance. Tomorrow he would need to find the definitive evidence that would prove Celeste Drummond's guilt beyond any doubt. Ruby Harmon deserved nothing less than complete vindication, and he was determined to deliver it. The pattern was clear, the timeline established, and the truth was emerging. All that remained was capturing the proof that would finally bring justice to a woman who had suffered enough. Detective Owen Blackwell sat in his bright office under harsh fluorescent lighting, surrounded by case files and photographs scattered across his mahogany desk. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting sharp shadows across the evidence he'd been meticulously collecting for weeks. His orange polo shirt stretched across his muscular frame as he leaned forward, studying the timeline he'd constructed on his whiteboard. Something was still missing, a crucial piece that would transform his circumstantial evidence into an ironclad case. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Raymond Calloway, a security expert wearing a crisp orange dress shirt and dark blue pants, had called that morning with information that would change everything. Detective Blackwell had contacted every security company in the city, following a hunch that someone might have captured footage from the Coldwell anniversary party. "Detective Blackwell, you're going to want to see this," Raymond said as he entered the office, carrying a silver laptop case. His weathered face showed the satisfaction of a man who'd found exactly what they were looking for. "We were hired to monitor the perimeter of the Coldwell mansion during their anniversary party. Standard wealthy family protocol, you understand. They wanted discreet surveillance of the grounds and parking areas." Detective Blackwell's pulse quickened as Raymond set up his laptop on the desk, the screen illuminating under the bright office lighting. "Our cameras captured every guest arrival and departure. I've gone through the footage myself, and there's something very interesting about one particular guest's behavior." The detective watched intently as Raymond pulled up the security footage, time-stamped and crystal clear. The exterior cameras had captured the elegant guests arriving in their luxury vehicles, parking attendants directing traffic, and the general flow of the evening's activities. Everything appeared normal until Raymond fast-forwarded to a specific time frame. "Here's where it gets interesting," Raymond said, pointing at the screen. "Watch this guest right here." The footage showed Celeste Drummond, clearly identifiable, in her expensive red silk dress, walking to her silver Mercedes during the middle of the party. She appeared nervous, looking over her shoulder as she approached her vehicle. "She made 2 trips to her car that night," Raymond continued, advancing the footage. "The first trip was at 9:47 p.m., right around the time the ring would have gone missing according to your timeline. The second trip was at 11:15 p.m., just before the theft was discovered." Detective Blackwell studied Celeste's body language in the footage. Her movements were hurried, almost frantic. She kept glancing back toward the mansion, and her hands appeared to be clutching something close to her chest during the first trip. The second trip showed her returning from the car, but her demeanor had shifted to one of barely controlled panic. "This is exactly what I needed," Detective Blackwell said, his professional satisfaction evident in his voice. "Can you provide me with certified copies of this footage?" "Already prepared," Raymond replied, handing over a sealed envelope. "Everything's been properly documented and authenticated. This footage will hold up in any court of law." Armed with this crucial evidence, Detective Blackwell knew it was time to take the next step. He contacted the district attorney's office and obtained a search warrant for Celeste Drummond's residence. The legal process moved swiftly once Judge Margaret Foster reviewed the security footage and Detective Blackwell's comprehensive investigation report. 2 hours later, Detective Blackwell stood outside Celeste Drummond's sprawling mansion in the affluent Riverside district, accompanied by Officer Patrick Guerrero, whose short-sleeved police uniform displayed his muscular build. The search warrant felt heavy in Detective Blackwell's hand as they approached the front door, knowing that what they found inside would either vindicate Ruby Harmon completely or send them back to square one. Celeste answered the door herself, wearing a flowing red silk dress that coordinated perfectly with her precisely applied makeup. However, her composure cracked the moment she saw Detective Blackwell's familiar face and Officer Guerrero's uniform. The color drained from her cheeks as Detective Blackwell presented the search warrant. "Mrs. Drummond, we have a warrant to search your home in connection with the theft of jewelry from the Coldwell anniversary party," Detective Blackwell announced formally. "We're particularly interested in examining your home safe and any jewelry collection you might have." Celeste's hands trembled as she read the warrant, her eyes darting nervously between the 2 men. "I don't understand why you would think I'm involved in any theft," she stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. The search didn't take long. Celeste's home office contained a sophisticated wall safe hidden behind an oil painting, and Detective Blackwell's experienced eye immediately focused on that location. After Celeste reluctantly provided the combination, the safe revealed its shocking contents. There, nestled in a velvet jewelry box, was Serena Coldwell's grandmother's Art Deco ring, its diamonds catching the sunlight streaming through the mansion's large windows. But that wasn't all. The safe contained dozens of pieces of expensive jewelry, watches, and small valuable items, each carefully catalogued in a leather-bound notebook that documented dates, locations, and detailed descriptions of the stolen items. "Mrs. Drummond," Detective Blackwell said quietly, "I think we need to have a conversation." They moved to Celeste's sunlit living room, where floor-to-ceiling windows provided natural lighting that seemed to expose every hidden truth. Celeste collapsed into her white leather sofa, her red silk dress spreading around her like spilled wine. The facade she'd maintained for so long finally crumbled under the weight of undeniable evidence. "I never meant for that woman to get blamed," Celeste began, her voice breaking with emotion. "I've been struggling with this compulsive behavior for 3 years, ever since my divorce. The shame, the depression, it all became overwhelming, and stealing became this twisted way of feeling some kind of control." Detective Blackwell listened carefully as Celeste detailed her kleptomania, how it had started small with items from stores, but had escalated to taking jewelry and valuables from social events. Her confession revealed a woman trapped by mental illness, but Detective Blackwell remained focused on the injustice that Ruby Harmon had suffered. "I planned to return the ring," Celeste continued, tears streaming down her face. "I always planned to return everything eventually, but when Serena immediately accused her housekeeper, I panicked. I knew if I came forward, my entire social circle would discover my problem. I thought maybe if I just waited, the situation would resolve itself somehow." Officer Guerrero took detailed notes as Celeste provided her full confession, documenting not just the Coldwell ring theft, but admitting to dozens of other thefts over the past 2 years. The scope of her criminal activity was staggering, involving multiple victims who had never reported their losses, likely unaware that items had been stolen during social gatherings. "Mrs. Drummond, you understand that your actions have destroyed an innocent woman's reputation and livelihood," Detective Blackwell said firmly. "Ruby Harmon has worked faithfully for 23 years, and your inability to take responsibility immediately has caused her immeasurable harm." Celeste nodded miserably, understanding the full weight of her actions for the first time. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I'll testify. I'll provide full restitution. I'll publicly apologize. I just want to get help for this compulsion that's been destroying my life." Meanwhile, across town in a bright downtown office building, Ruby Harmon pushed her cleaning cart down the fluorescent-lit hallway, wearing a green cleaning uniform with matching blue apron. She'd been working temporary assignments for the past 2 weeks, grateful for any income while Detective Blackwell pursued his investigation. The work was familiar, but everything felt different now. Every whisper between coworkers, every glance from building tenants, made her wonder if word of Serena's accusations had spread. Her phone rang as she was restocking supplies in a supply closet, the bright overhead lighting casting harsh shadows across her weathered hands. Detective Blackwell's name appeared on the screen, and Ruby's heart immediately began racing. She'd been waiting for this call, hoping and praying that somehow he'd found evidence to clear her name. "Ruby, I have news." Detective Blackwell's voice carried a note of triumph that made Ruby sink onto a nearby chair. "We found the ring. We found everything. Celeste Drummond confessed to stealing it, and she's confessed to dozens of other thefts over the past 2 years." Ruby's cleaning supplies scattered across the floor as her hands began shaking uncontrollably. The relief that washed over her was so intense that she could barely breathe. 23 years of faithful service, her impeccable reputation, her son's future, everything she'd feared was lost forever, had been restored in a single phone call. "She confessed?" Ruby whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She actually admitted to taking Mrs. Coldwell's ring?" "Not just admitted, Ruby. We have security footage showing her taking items to her car during the party. We found the ring in her home safe, along with jewelry stolen from dozens of other social events. She's provided a full written confession, and she's agreed to testify about her kleptomania and how she let you take the blame." Ruby collapsed further into the chair, overwhelmed by emotions she'd been suppressing for weeks. The vindication felt almost too good to be true after the nightmare of false accusations and public humiliation she'd endured. Her faith in justice, which had been severely tested, suddenly felt restored. "What happens now?" Ruby asked, wiping tears from her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Now we take this evidence to your attorney Diana Wien, and we make sure Serena Coldwell faces full consequences for what she did to you." Detective Blackwell replied with determination. "You didn't just lose a job, Ruby. You lost your reputation, your sense of security, and nearly lost hope in justice itself. That demands accountability." After ending the call, Ruby sat in the supply closet under the bright fluorescent lights, still wearing her green cleaning uniform, and allowed herself to truly feel the magnitude of what had just happened. For weeks, she'd carried the weight of false accusations, the shame of being called a thief, and the terror that her son's medical career might be damaged by association with her supposed crimes. Detective Blackwell spent the remainder of the day preparing his comprehensive case file for Ruby's attorney. Diana Winne, wearing a professional green blazer and black pants, reviewed every piece of evidence in her bright law office overlooking the city. The security footage, Celeste's written confession, the recovered jewelry, and witness statements created an overwhelming case that would not only clear Ruby's name, but provide grounds for substantial legal action against Serena Coldwell. "This is more than just vindication," Diana told Detective Blackwell as they reviewed the evidence. "This is a clear case of defamation, false accusation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Serena Coldwell made no effort to investigate before destroying Ruby's reputation. That's going to cost her dearly." The sun was setting as Detective Blackwell finally leaned back in his office chair, satisfied with a case that had revealed the truth and would deliver justice. Ruby Harmon's 23 years of faithful service would be vindicated. Celeste Drummond would receive the mental health treatment she needed while facing appropriate legal consequences, and Serena Coldwell would finally be held accountable for her years of abusive behavior. The evidence had emerged, the truth had been revealed, and justice was finally within reach. The morning sun streamed through the expansive windows of Diana Winne's law office, casting bright rectangles of light across the polished conference table. Ruby Harmon sat quietly in her navy blue dress, her hands folded in her lap, trying to calm the nervous energy coursing through her veins. After 23 years of accepting whatever Serena Coldwell dished out, today would be different. Today she had Detective Owen Blackwell's evidence folder sitting on the table like a weapon of truth. Diana Winne, wearing a crisp green blazer over black pants, reviewed her notes one final time under the bright overhead fluorescent lighting. Her professional demeanor radiated confidence, but Ruby could see the anticipation in her eyes. They had been preparing for this moment for weeks, and now the confrontation that would determine Ruby's future was about to begin. "Remember, Ruby," Diana said softly, "let me do most of the talking initially. When the time comes for you to speak, you'll know it. Trust yourself." Detective Blackwell entered the conference room carrying his evidence case, wearing an orange button-down shirt and dark blue pants. His muscular frame filled the doorway as he nodded to both women. "Everything's ready. The security footage is queued up, and I have Celeste's full written confession. Serena Coldwell won't be able to deny any of this." The receptionist's voice crackled through the intercom. "Ms. Mouilly, the Coldwell party has arrived." Ruby's heart hammered against her ribcage. 23 years of cleaning Serena's mansion, enduring her condescending remarks, and accepting treatment that no human being should tolerate had led to this moment. She thought of Marcus, now Dr. Marcus Harmon, and how proud he would be to see his mother finally standing up for herself. The conference room door opened, and Serena Coldwell swept in wearing a tailored red designer suit, her blonde hair perfectly styled, radiating the arrogance of someone who had never faced real consequences. Behind her walked Thomas Coldwell in a green dress shirt and navy jacket, his discomfort evident in his hunched shoulders and reluctant steps. Serena's attorney, a thin man in an expensive gray suit, followed closely behind. "I hope this won't take long," Serena announced, not bothering with pleasantries. Her cold blue eyes swept dismissively over Ruby before settling on Diana Winne. "I have a charity luncheon at noon, and I don't appreciate being dragged here over some fabricated claims by a disgruntled former employee." Ruby felt the familiar sting of Serena's dismissive tone, but this time something was different. She wasn't alone. She wasn't powerless. Detective Blackwell had found the truth, and Diana Winne was here to fight for her. Diana Winne's voice cut through the tension with professional precision. "Please take a seat. I think you'll find this meeting quite illuminating, Mrs. Coldwell." Serena sat across from Ruby, her posture rigid with false confidence. Thomas settled beside his wife, avoiding eye contact with everyone in the room. The natural light streaming through the windows created a stark contrast between the two sides of the table, as if truth and lies were being separated by rays of sunshine. Before we begin, Diana continued, I want to make it clear that this meeting is being recorded with everyone's knowledge. Detective Blackwell has completed his investigation into the theft of your grandmother's ring, and we have significant findings to present. Detective Blackwell opened his evidence folder with deliberate care. Mrs. Coldwell, 3 weeks ago you accused Ruby Harmon of stealing your family heirloom. You fired her immediately, threatened her with criminal charges, and publicly humiliated her in front of your anniversary party guests. Is that correct? Of course it's correct, Serena snapped. She was the only one with access to my bedroom, and the ring disappeared. Simple logic. Ruby watched as Detective Blackwell pulled out a manila envelope. The anticipation in the bright conference room was palpable. I'd like to present evidence that completely contradicts your accusation, Detective Blackwell said calmly. He placed a series of photographs on the table. These are images of the recovered ring, found in the home safe of your friend, Celeste Drummond. Serena's face went completely white. Thomas leaned forward, staring at the photographs in shock. Detective Blackwell continued methodically. Along with the ring, we discovered several other pieces of jewelry that Mrs. Drummond had stolen from various social events over the past 2 years. She's been struggling with kleptomania, a compulsive stealing disorder. That's impossible, Serena whispered, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Furthermore, Detective Blackwell said, producing a tablet computer, I have security footage from the external cameras that were monitoring your property during the anniversary party. The tablet screen illuminated under the bright office lighting as Detective Blackwell played the footage. The timestamp clearly showed Celeste Drummond making 2 trips to her car during the party, behavior that no other guest exhibited. This footage shows Mrs. Drummond concealing something in her purse as she exits your mansion during the second trip. The timestamp corresponds exactly with when other guests reported seeing her leaving your bedroom area. Thomas Coldwell spoke for the first time, his voice barely above a whisper. My God, Serena, what have you done? Detective Blackwell placed a handwritten document on the table. This is Celeste Drummond's full confession. She's admitted to stealing the ring and explains that she's been receiving treatment for kleptomania from Dr. Hannah Briggs for the past year. She expresses deep remorse for allowing Ruby to be blamed for her actions. Serena stared at the confession, her hands trembling as she picked it up. The confident socialite who had entered the room was crumbling before their eyes, replaced by someone facing the magnitude of her catastrophic mistake. Diana Nguyen leaned forward, her voice taking on a steel edge. Mrs. Coldwell, you destroyed the reputation of a woman who served your family faithfully for 23 years. Ruby Harmon sacrificed everything to put her son through medical school while enduring your constant belittlement and abuse. When your ring went missing, you immediately assumed she was a thief based on nothing but your own prejudices. I thought, Serena stammered. You thought what? Diana pressed. That because Ruby was your housekeeper, she must be a criminal? That 23 years of honest, dedicated service meant nothing? Ruby felt something stirring inside her chest, a strength she had kept buried for decades. The bright sunlight streaming through the windows seemed to illuminate not just the room, but her own sense of self-worth. Diana Nguyen opened her legal folder. We're filing a comprehensive lawsuit for defamation of character, intentional infliction of emotional distress, wrongful termination, and false accusation. Ruby has suffered damage to her reputation in the domestic worker community, lost wages, emotional trauma, and public humiliation. Serena's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but she pushed him away. Look, this has all been a terrible misunderstanding. I'm sure we can work something out quietly. A settlement, perhaps. No need to drag this through the courts and create a public spectacle. For 23 years, Ruby had accepted Serena's version of reality. She had cleaned up Serena's messes, tolerated her cruel comments, and stayed silent when she should have spoken up. But sitting in this bright conference room, surrounded by people who believed in her innocence and her worth, Ruby finally found her voice. "No," Ruby said quietly, but with unmistakable strength. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Serena's eyes widened in surprise, as if she couldn't believe Ruby had spoken. Ruby stood up slowly, her navy blue dress catching the natural light from the windows. No quiet settlements, no private apologies. "For 23 years, I accepted how you treated me because I needed the job to support my son. I cleaned your house, cooked your meals, and listened to you talk about me like I was invisible or stupid or worthless." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "You accused me of being a thief in front of all those people. You destroyed my reputation without even bothering to investigate. You were ready to have me arrested and destroy my son's future because you assumed the worst about me." Serena's face flushed red with anger. "Now listen here, Ruby. You're getting carried away. You worked for me, and I had every right to." "You had every right to what?" Ruby interrupted, her voice rising. "To treat me like property? To assume I was a criminal because I'm black and worked as your housekeeper?" The truth hung in the air like a challenge. Serena's mask of civility finally slipped completely. "Don't you dare play the race card with me," Serena snarled. "People like you always do that when you get caught. You want to blame everything on racism instead of taking responsibility for your actions." Detective Blackwell's hand moved subtly to his recording device, making sure every word was captured. "People like me?" Ruby repeated. "What exactly do you mean by that, Mrs. Coldwell?" Serena stood up, her red suit blazing under the fluorescent lights. "I mean people who don't know their place. I gave you a job, a steady income, and this is how you repay me? By dragging me into court because your feelings got hurt?" Thomas Coldwell finally spoke up, his voice filled with shame. "Serena, stop talking. You're making this worse." "Don't tell me to stop," Serena whirled on her husband. "I'm tired of everyone acting like I'm the villain here. Ruby worked in my house. She had access to my private belongings. When something went missing, of course I suspected her. That's just common sense." "Common sense?" Diana Nguyen interjected. "Or racial profiling?" Serena's eyes blazed with fury. "Call it whatever you want. When you let these people into your home, you take risks. Everyone knows that. Ruby should be grateful I'm not pressing charges for defamation." The silence in the conference room was deafening. Detective Blackwell looked disgusted. Diana Nguyen appeared almost pleased to have Serena's true nature on record, and Thomas Coldwell looked like he wanted to disappear. Ruby felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. After decades of wondering if Serena's treatment of her was really as bad as it seemed, she finally had absolute clarity. Thomas Coldwell stood up abruptly. "Ruby, I want you to know that I am deeply ashamed of my wife's behavior and my own failure to stop it over the years. You are a woman of impeccable character, and you deserve so much better than how we treated you." "Sit down, Thomas," Serena hissed. "Don't you dare apologize to her." Thomas turned to face his wife, and Ruby saw something she had never seen before in his eyes: disgust. "I've watched you treat Ruby and every other person who worked for us like they were subhuman. I've stayed silent for 23 years, and I'm done. Ruby Harmon has more dignity and class than you'll ever have." Serena grabbed her purse and stood up. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by the help and my spineless husband." Diana Nguyen's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Mrs. Coldwell, I want to thank you. Your comments today have provided excellent evidence for our case regarding the malicious and discriminatory nature of your actions against my client." Serena's face went pale as she realized how badly she had damaged her own legal position. "We'll be filing formal charges first thing Monday morning," Diana continued. "Ruby Harmon deserves her day in court, and after what we've witnessed here today, I'm confident the jury will see exactly who you really are." Serena stormed toward the door, her red suit a blur of fury and panic. "You'll regret this, Ruby. All of you will regret this." After she left, the conference room felt cleaner somehow, as if her toxic presence had been scrubbed away by the bright morning light. Thomas Coldwell lingered, looking at Ruby with genuine remorse. "Ruby, I know this doesn't change anything, but I want you to know that I'll testify on your behalf. It's the least I can do after failing you for so many years." As Diana Nguyen began preparing the paperwork that would officially begin Ruby's fight for justice, Ruby looked out at the bright sky visible through the office windows. For the first time in 23 years, her future looked as bright as the sunshine streaming into the room. The courthouse buzzed with an energy that Ruby Harmon had never experienced before. Reporters clustered outside the imposing stone building, their cameras flashing as news vans lined the street. The scandal had captured the attention of the entire city, a wealthy socialite's false accusation against her loyal housekeeper, the dramatic investigation that followed, and now the civil trial that would determine justice. Ruby adjusted the collar of her dignified blue dress, her hands trembling slightly as she walked through the courthouse doors with her attorney Diana Nguyen. The lawyer wore a sharp green blazer with black pants, her expression confident and determined. Detective Owen Blackwell, dressed in his signature orange polo shirt and blue jeans, walked beside them, carrying a briefcase filled with evidence that would change everything. The courtroom itself was magnificent. High ceilings, with massive windows that allowed natural light to flood the space, complemented by bright overhead fluorescent lighting. Every seat was packed. Ruby's heart swelled when she spotted her son Marcus in the front row, wearing a crisp green dress shirt with a blue tie. He had graduated from Harvard Medical School just weeks earlier, and seeing him there, supporting her after all she had sacrificed, filled her with overwhelming pride. Judge Margaret Foster entered the courtroom, her presence commanding immediate respect. An African-American woman in her 50s, she wore traditional judicial robes and carried herself with the dignity of someone who understood the weight of justice. Ruby felt a spark of hope, seeing a woman who might understand her struggle, presiding over the case. Across the aisle, Serena Coldwell sat rigidly in a red designer suit, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. Her legal team surrounded her, expensive suits and leather briefcases creating a fortress of privilege. Thomas Coldwell sat separately, wearing a green shirt and navy pants, his distance from his wife speaking volumes about the cracks in their marriage. "The court will come to order," Judge Foster announced, her voice carrying clearly through the bright courtroom. "We are here today to address the civil case of Ruby Harmon versus Serena Coldwell regarding defamation, false accusation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." Diana Nguyen rose for her opening statement, her voice clear and passionate as she outlined Ruby's 23 years of faithful service and the devastating impact of Serena's false accusation. Ruby watched the jury's faces, seeing their expressions shift from curiosity to sympathy as the scope of the injustice became clear. When Ruby was called to the witness stand, she felt every eye in the courtroom upon her. The natural light streaming through the tall windows seemed to illuminate her path as she walked forward, her blue dress a symbol of the dignity she had maintained throughout this ordeal. "Please state your name for the record." Diana Nguyen began gently. "Ruby Harmon," she replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Mrs. Harmon, can you tell the court about your employment with Serena Coldwell?" Ruby took a breath and began sharing her story. She spoke of arriving at the Coldwell mansion at 17 years old, eager to work and support her young son. She described 2 decades of dedication, cleaning crystal chandeliers, polishing mahogany furniture, maintaining pristine white marble floors. Her voice grew stronger as she detailed the countless extra hours worked without complaint, the holidays missed to serve at Serena's parties, the constant stream of criticism and humiliation she endured in silence. "And why did you endure this treatment?" Diana Wien asked. Ruby's eyes found Marcus in the gallery. "For my son, every dollar I earned, every sacrifice I made, was so Marcus could have opportunities I never had, so he could become a doctor and help people." The courtroom was silent except for the soft scratching of the court reporter's keys. Ruby continued, describing the night of the anniversary party, the shock of being accused, the devastating impact on her reputation and her son's future. By the time she finished, several jurors were visibly moved. Detective Blackwell took the stand next, his muscular frame filling the witness chair as he methodically presented his investigation. Under bright courtroom lighting, he displayed timeline charts, photographs, and security footage on large screens. His testimony was precise and professional, walking the jury through each step that led to the truth. "Detective Blackwell, what did your investigation reveal about the defendant's actions following the alleged theft?" Diana Nguyen asked. "Mrs. Coldwell made no attempt to investigate other possibilities," Detective Blackwell replied firmly. "She never checked security footage, never interviewed other guests, never considered that someone else might be responsible. She immediately accused Mrs. Harmon based solely on the assumption that the housekeeper must be guilty." The weight of those words settled over the courtroom. Serena Coldwell's face flushed red, but she remained silent. Celeste Drummond took the stand wearing an orange blouse and blue skirt, her hands shaking as she was sworn in. Her testimony was heartbreaking. Years of struggling with kleptomania, the shame of her addiction, the panic when Ruby was accused for her crime. "Mrs. Drummond, did you steal Serena Coldwell's ring?" Diana Nguyen asked directly. "Yes," Celeste whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I have a compulsive stealing disorder. I've been getting treatment, but that night I couldn't control myself. When I heard Ruby being blamed, I was terrified. I wanted to confess, but I was a coward." She turned toward Ruby in the gallery. "Ruby, I am so deeply sorry for what my actions cost you. You are one of the kindest, most honest people I've ever known, and you suffered for my weakness." The testimony that shocked everyone came from Thomas Coldwell himself. Wearing his green shirt and navy pants, he walked to the witness stand with the weight of years of suppressed guilt on his shoulders. "Mr. Coldwell, you've been married to the defendant for 25 years. Can you speak to her character?" Diana Nguyen asked. Thomas looked directly at his wife, his expression filled with sadness and determination. "Serena has always looked down on people she considers beneath her social class. She's fired housekeepers for minor mistakes, refused to pay fair wages, and made cruel comments about their intelligence and worth. I was too much of a coward to stop her, and I will regret that forever." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Serena Coldwell's face went white with rage, but her attorney quickly silenced her. "Are you saying this pattern of behavior extends beyond this incident?" Diana Nguyen pressed. "Yes," Thomas replied, his voice growing stronger. "Ruby Harmon was the best employee we ever had. She was honest, hardworking, and devoted to our family. Serena accused her because she needed someone to blame, and Ruby was convenient. It had nothing to do with evidence or truth." Thomas paused, looking directly at Judge Foster. "Your Honor, I want it on record that I am filing for divorce from Serena Coldwell. I can no longer be married to someone who would destroy an innocent woman's life to protect her own reputation." The media section exploded with activity as reporters scribbled notes and photographers captured Serena's shocked expression. Judge Foster called for order, her gavel echoing through the bright courtroom. Mrs. Florence Kingsley, the elderly witness in her blue jacket, testified about seeing Celeste coming out of Serena's bedroom looking flustered during the party. Her testimony was clear and damning, providing the timeline that proved Ruby's innocence. Raymond Calloway, the security expert in his orange shirt and dark blue pants, presented the technical evidence, the footage that showed Celeste's suspicious behavior, the timeline that proved Ruby was in the kitchen during the theft, the meticulous documentation that revealed the truth, as witness after witness testified to Ruby's impeccable character and Serena's pattern of abusive behavior. The defense's case crumbled. Serena's expensive lawyers tried to minimize the damage, arguing that their client had made an honest mistake under stress. But the evidence was overwhelming, and their arguments fell flat in the face of Detective Blackwell's thorough investigation. Diana Wen's closing argument was passionate and powerful. Standing in the bright courtroom, under the natural light streaming through the tall windows, she spoke about power, privilege, and the responsibility that comes with wealth. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about more than a stolen ring. It's about a woman who believed her money and status gave her the right to destroy an innocent person's life. Serena Coldwell never bothered to investigate because she didn't care about the truth. She saw Ruby Harmon as expendable, as someone whose life and reputation meant nothing compared to her own convenience. Diana gestured toward Ruby, sitting dignified in her blue dress. Ruby Harmon gave 23 years of her life to that family. She worked through holidays, endured constant criticism, and saved every penny to give her son opportunities. And when she needed basic fairness and justice, Serena Coldwell chose cruelty instead. The defense's closing argument was weak, focusing on Serena's shock at the theft and her emotional state during the party. But it was clear they had little to work with. The evidence was too strong, the pattern of behavior too well documented, the injustice too obvious. As the arguments concluded, Judge Foster prepared to deliver her instructions to the jury. The bright courtroom fell silent, every person understanding that they were witnessing a moment that would define not just Ruby's future, but send a message about accountability and justice. Ruby reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand, feeling his strength and support flowing back to her. Detective Blackwell gave her an encouraging nod from across the aisle. Diana Nguyen sat beside her, radiating confidence in their case. The fluorescent lights above seemed to shine brighter as Judge Foster raised her gavel, the natural light from the tall windows creating an almost sacred atmosphere in the packed courtroom. 23 years of service, months of investigation, and a lifetime of dignity had led to this moment. Justice was finally within reach, and Ruby Harmon was ready to claim it. The bright courtroom held its breath as Judge Margaret Foster adjusted her reading glasses, the morning sunlight streaming through the tall windows casting everything in sharp, crystalline clarity. The overhead fluorescent lights combined with the natural skylight created an almost ethereal atmosphere, as if the very air itself demanded truth and justice. Ruby Harmon sat straight-backed in her blue dress, her hands folded in her lap, every muscle in her body tense with anticipation. 23 years of faithful service, months of investigation, and weeks of testimony had all led to this singular moment. Her son Marcus, resplendent in his green dress shirt and blue tie, sat directly behind her, his medical degree from Harvard now framed by the dignity his mother had always embodied. Detective Owen Blackwell, wearing his signature orange polo shirt beneath a blue jacket, watched from the gallery, his muscular frame relaxed but alert. Attorney Diana Nguyen, professional in her green blazer and black pants, sat beside Ruby, her legal pad filled with meticulous notes and unwavering confidence. Across the aisle, Serena Coldwell sat rigid in her red designer suit, her usual mask of arrogant superiority replaced by barely concealed panic. Her lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, but Serena's eyes remained fixed on Judge Foster, as if she could will a different outcome through sheer force of entitled expectation. Judge Foster cleared her throat, and the courtroom fell into absolute silence. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of justice, long delayed, but finally delivered. In the matter of Harmon versus Coldwell, she began, her words measured and deliberate. This court finds the defendant, Serena Coldwell, liable for defamation of character, false accusation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and malicious prosecution. A collective gasp rippled through the packed courtroom. Ruby felt her heart hammering against her ribs, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. The evidence presented in this case, Judge Foster continued, reveals a pattern of behavior that goes far beyond a simple misunderstanding. Mrs. Coldwell deliberately and maliciously accused Mrs. Harmon of theft without conducting any investigation, without examining available evidence, and without consideration for the devastating impact such accusations would have on Mrs. Harmon's life and livelihood. Serena's face had gone ashen, her red lipstick stark against her suddenly pale complexion. Furthermore, Judge Foster's voice grew stronger, more pointed. The court finds that Mrs. Coldwell's immediate assumption of guilt was based on racist and classist prejudices that have no place in our society. The defendant exploited a power imbalance built on economic disparity and social position to destroy an innocent woman's reputation. Ruby felt tears streaming down her cheeks, but for the first time in months, they were tears of vindication rather than despair. Mrs. Ruby Harmon dedicated 23 years of her life to faithful service, maintaining impeccable character and unwavering integrity throughout her employment. The testimony of witnesses, including the defendant's own husband, painted a clear picture of Mrs. Harmon's exemplary character and Mrs. Coldwell's pattern of abusive behavior toward domestic staff. Judge Foster paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the courtroom like morning sunlight, burning away shadows. Therefore, this court awards Mrs. Ruby Harmon the sum of $2,300,000 in damages. This includes compensation for lost wages, emotional distress, damage to reputation, and substantial punitive damages, designed to send a clear message that such behavior will not be tolerated. The courtroom erupted. Serena Coldwell slumped forward as if physically struck, her red suit a stark contrast to her complete collapse. Her lawyer grabbed her shoulder, trying to steady her, but she seemed beyond help or comfort. Ruby turned to embrace her son, both of them crying openly now, their tears mixing joy with relief, vindication with overwhelming gratitude. Marcus held his mother tight, whispering, "You did it, Mama. You fought back and you won." Detective Blackwell rose from his seat, his face beaming with professional satisfaction and personal joy for Ruby's victory. He had seen too many cases where wealth and privilege crushed the innocent, but today, justice had prevailed. As they moved into the sunlit courthouse hallway, media cameras flashed and reporters called out questions. Ruby held her head high, her dignity intact, and her vindication complete. Diana Nguyen handled the press with professional skill, while Ruby focused on the overwhelming reality of her victory. The months that followed transformed not just Ruby's life, but the lives of countless others facing similar injustices. Using a portion of her settlement, Ruby established the Harmon Foundation for Domestic Worker Justice, operating from a bright, beautiful office space with large windows that flooded the room with natural light. Detective Blackwell joined the foundation as chief investigator, bringing his skills and determination to cases involving domestic workers facing false accusations or workplace abuse. His muscular frame became a familiar sight in courtrooms across the city as he methodically built cases for the voiceless and vulnerable. Celeste Drummond, the woman whose kleptomania had started this entire ordeal, entered comprehensive treatment for her condition. She made private restitution to Ruby, not just financially but through heartfelt letters acknowledging the pain her actions had caused. Her recovery became a testament to the possibility of redemption, even in the darkest circumstances. Thomas Coldwell followed through on his promise to divorce Serena, but his actions went far beyond legal separation. He provided character testimony for Ruby's foundation work and became an unexpected ally in efforts to protect domestic workers' rights. His testimony in divorce proceedings revealed years of Serena's abusive behavior, ensuring that her pattern of cruelty would have lasting consequences. Serena herself faced a complete social and financial collapse that money couldn't repair. The media coverage destroyed her reputation in high society circles, where reputation meant everything. Former friends abandoned her. Charity boards removed her from leadership positions, and the social events that had once defined her existence became sources of whispered gossip and pointed exclusion. Criminal charges for filing false police reports added legal consequences to her social downfall. The woman who had once wielded her wealth and status like weapons found herself isolated, facing the reality that some actions have irreversible consequences. 6 months after the trial, Ruby sat in her own bright home office, wearing a green blouse and blue skirt, coordinating her foundation's expanding work. The room was filled with natural light from large windows, creating the perfect environment for the hope and healing her organization provided. Her son Marcus, now Dr. Harmon, had begun his residency at a prestigious hospital, but he regularly credited his mother's strength and dignity as his primary inspiration. The boy who had once worried about affording medical school now served patients with a deep understanding of justice and compassion, learned at his mother's side. The foundation had already helped dozens of domestic workers facing similar injustices. Detective Blackwell's investigations had uncovered patterns of abuse by wealthy employers, leading to settlements, legal reforms, and most importantly, restored dignity for workers who had been voiceless for too long. Ruby opened her morning mail with practiced efficiency, but one letter made her pause. The envelope bore the careful handwriting of someone unaccustomed to formal correspondence, and the return address showed a modest neighborhood across town. Inside, she found a letter from Maria Santos, a housekeeper facing false accusations from her wealthy employer. The letter detailed circumstances eerily similar to Ruby's own experience: years of faithful service, sudden accusations of theft, threats of criminal charges, and the devastating impact on her family's future. Ruby held the letter in her hands, remembering her own desperation just months earlier when she had faced similar circumstances with no one to turn to and no hope for justice. The bright office around her seemed to shimmer with possibility as she reached for her phone to call Detective Blackwell. The cycle would continue, but now it would be a cycle of justice rather than exploitation. Ruby's victory had created something far more valuable than financial compensation. It had created hope for others facing seemingly impossible odds against wealth and privilege. As she dialed the phone, Ruby smiled, knowing that her 23 years of faithful service had prepared her for this new role. She had learned that dignity couldn't be stolen, that truth had power beyond wealth, and that sometimes one person's courage to fight back could light the way for countless others walking similar paths. The bright sunlight streaming through her office windows seemed to promise that this story of justice would multiply, spreading hope and legal protection to workers who had spent too many years in the shadows of other people's privilege. Ruby Harmon had found her true calling, and her victory was just the beginning. You just heard a story that history tried to overlook. If it stayed with you, take a second to stand with it. Subscribe, share, and help us keep telling the stories that deserve light, not silence.